Religions may depend on the evolution of particular features of the human brain. While humans remain primates, the main DNA differences are for a larger brain, face perception, speech, and prolonged attachment. Tool use, which requires finger-thumb opposition, is another DNA difference, but less relevant to religion. The increase in size of the brain between bonobos and men is mainly in the size and number of folds in the outer layer, called the cerebral hemispheres. The brain surgeon Wilder Penfield drew a map which he called a homunculus, or little man, of what the brain knows about the body. You can see that the brain knows a lot about the parts used for speech and the thumb, but not much at all about the legs or abdomen. Having a big brain gave early humans an edge. They were able to adapt to new food sources with climate change, but it had disadvantages. Childbirth became painful as ever larger skulls were forced between the mother's pelvic bones. The crowded skull may also have caused migraine. Prehistoric peoples often engraved jagged zigzags and battlements like migraine aura. The temporal lobes at the side of the brain are heavily involved in memory. If stimulated inappropriately, the temporal lobes may give rise to the sensation of spirits, visions, and so forth. A considerable number of people who claim mystic visions turn out to have temporal lobe epilepsy. Persinger collected the histories of such a series of mystics in 1993. The ability to interpret the mental state of other people is central to troop life. We can make good guesses about the minds in other people using their facial expressions and what they say. But animistic religions attribute minds also to animals and places, and children attribute minds to trains, aeroplanes, and other inanimate things. A few humans do not have this theory of mind, and they are called autistic. Face perception is the first channel we have to other people's minds. We have highly refined perception of facial expressions. Perhaps 200 emotions can be inferred from the eyes alone. Many expressions can be read between cultures, though some misunderstandings arise. In East Asia, people focus on the eyes more and may not notice the mouth. Most primates are not very good at interpreting human faces. Curiously, dogs are very good at it. Speech is the most important channel to other people's minds. A crucial genetic change, the Fox gene, allowed language to develop. Speech allows a troop to make a coordinated attack on a danger animal, or ask the oldest person where water was found during the last drought. Neanderthals also seem to have had this Fox gene. Early language probably involved a lot of verbal pointing or onomatopoeia. The sound points to the object, as in sploosh or woof. These are still fairly recognizable in other languages. For example, the French onomatopoeias are sploosh and roi. Later on, writing also tried to copy the object. Chinese and Egyptian hieroglyphics tried to draw how the object looked. Modern languages largely abandoned representation and onomatopoeia. Things and the words that describe them have arbitrary connections. Children in different countries might say dog, chien, kulp, inu, hund. The names are not connected with how the animal looks or sounds. The ability to manipulate internal language for deception, hypothesis, and so forth is fairly recent. A poker player can decide to raise the stakes while holding poor cards. We can manipulate the words in our minds without reference to the objects. We can have a hypothesis that there is life on Mars without being able to picture it or believe it. It was not always so. The pointing function of words used to be a whole lot stronger. Earlier languages assumed that the name of an object gave direct influence over it. One superstitious belief is that saying one of the many names of the devil, such as Mephistopheles or Old Nick, will cause him to appear. This notion of forceful words may be behind the idea of prophecy and commandment. Tolkien was a medieval scholar, and his novel The Lord of the Rings illustrates the medieval idea of controlling a thing by uttering its true name. When presented the riddle, "Speak, friend, and open," Gandalf eventually realizes that the original maker's word for friend is what controls the door. Some words were particularly powerful in older speech. A holy oath or a curse could have continuing effect long after the speaker was gone. Really important decisions, such as the right day to plant the seed corn, or whether to abandon the camp to forage elsewhere, might need the words of the gods rather than one person's ideas. If the elders could not agree, divine guidance might be needed to make the words more forceful. The name of God had particular power in early monotheistic religion, for example, Ichthus for early Christians. Hearing words and reading faces has lots of advantages. The main one is probably that it allows us to negotiate our place in the troop. Primates spend a lot of time negotiating their position in the hierarchy, and we are no different. Submission to the leader was crucial in troops that roamed and did not generally control territory. Deference to the alpha male remains deeply ingrained in humans. The psychology researcher Milgram showed that most people will administer lethal electric shocks if told to do so with credible authority. Attachment is the other issue that has increased dramatically in the transition from primates to men. Human infants have extremely long childhood, so babies must compel nurturance in others in order to survive, and adults must respond. The theory of attachment was developed by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth. Although they are not well known outside psychology, there are mountains in Kyrgyzia named after them. Human adults are exceptionally sensitive to the suffering of immature animals. Empathy, the ability to feel another's suffering as one's own, is part of that. When we look at Christian images of the crucifixion, we squirm at the imagined pain in our hands. The part of the brain for sensation in the hands fires up. This response depends on an attribution that cute puppies, earthquake victims, and religious martyrs are babies. We rarely make this attribution to young rats or cockroaches. Human children are equally preoccupied with finding protective adults. Superstitious thinking in children is most evident around age 4 to 5, when children attribute human motives to a variety of mechanical objects. Watching a plane take off, the child may say, "The plane wants to get to the clouds." When the child is frightened by thunder, he may be reassured by adults saying, "It is only God moving his furniture." Thomas the Tank Engine is a perfectly reasonable idea when you are 5. It is quite natural for small children to attribute human minds to objects all around them. In wholly atheistic homes, children of this age may discover God for themselves. So what has child psychology got to do with religion? We argue that religious theories co-opt some of these primate brain structures. Babies need parents and parents need babies. Citizens need leaders. Capagianis asked people about various religious issues and watched which areas of their brains were active on a magnetic resonance imaging scanner. He found that when thinking about God's love, areas in the frontal lobe were active. This is the part of the brain we use for planning and moral thinking. Functional MRI localized 2 other religious functions to a region in the brain. God's perceived anger went with activity in the side of the brain, and the sense that God was out of touch went with activity in the occipital lobe at the rear. So if we look at what the brain is doing when we think about religious issues, it turns out to be quite familiar. God is just another person.